Thank you very much for everybody to come here. I'm really glad to have Tommy Andersen from byFounders here today. And I collected a bunch of questions from you, but before we go there, I thought that I first introduce Tommy through the cool things I found out about his story. And his story starts as a farm boy. His father had farms, and the interesting part about it is that farm as an enterprise itself. But what he did was that he was merging and acquiring farms around. So Tommy was acquainted with the concept of buying other businesses from early on. But at the same time, he figured out that he does not want to be a farmer, although his father really wanted him to. So he had to escape. And the escape came in terms of Maersk Data, where he went to as a trainee. They had like in-house training program. He did 2 years of that, and after that, 7 years of being an account manager for big business clients using the data services. And about the same time, he went to Copenhagen Business School. After finishing this business school, he moved on to work for Legend, which is an enterprise software company. And he worked there about 2 years. But the key interesting part about Legend was that this is where you met with Kim Forenholtz. And remember that name? That guy pops up later on. And the Legend was merged with Computer Associates. So you helped to conduct the merger there a bit. But after the merger, you moved on to TI Software, and which is another enterprise software company, ERP company. And interesting part about TI Software was that you got fired from there, and which led to revenge part that you really wanted to show to the manager that you were right and he was wrong. And so the problem was that with a revenge that the year was August 2000, and getting fired after a crash and burn of IT market wasn't very nice situation to be in, which led to the only conclusion that in order to move forward, you have to do something yourself. So you contacted Kim, and he wasn't very happy either with his current employer. So you two decided that let's do something together, and so the Embedded was founded. That embedded software, you from a sales point, and Kim had more technical background. So this is where the cornerstones how you build it. And about the same time as you were hiring tech talent, you figured that why not to offer it, as you become so good at it, why not to offer it as a service with tech people, which was established in 2004. And you built Embedded for 6 years. After that, you got an offer to sell it. You didn't want to sell it, but Kim, being older and wiser, convinced you that it's the right time to actually sell it. So you did that. You worked for Embedded another 3 years until 2009. After that, you went and created a Libratown, which was the story was that a bunch of friends approached you that, hey, you just sold something, that you must be rich. Why not invest into our startup? And in addition to funding it, you decided to be part of the journey. And so who knows something about Libratone? Who has seen the product? Not many. So the Libratone was speakers, mobile speakers, which didn't need a wire, and which target audience was women. That all the other high-tech audio was targeted to men, and you decided that it's crowded market, red ocean, blue ocean. So let's not go into the male-dominated audio speakers market. Let's do something different, and let's target women. And so that's a part of actually the Libratone, which was really cool to me, that you targeted women. You made a deal with Apple having no product, and showing, you just had a mock-up 3D models of future product. And when it was time to actually show the product, it was piece of crap, and Apple cried out loud that, what the heck, guys, that it doesn't, like, there's no resemblance with the 3D models and what you are showing me. So really fake it till you make it attitude, which I really liked. But at the end of the day, due to the deal with Apple that you got your Libratone speakers to Apple stores, you were able to grow 60% annually, 3 years in a row, which made you famous enough that in 2014 you were approached by Asian group who bought Libratone. But Libratone in itself was actually kind of start for your investment career also, as Libratone being one of the first investments, but at the same time you also started a TAN holding, which has, according to LinkedIn, has made about 15 investments in SaaS and hardware. And in 2016, 2 years after selling Libratone, you founded Nordic Makers, which you were not involved very long. You kind of probably were, that's one of my questions, but you were probably bought over by byFounders in 2017. And now if somebody has a question, how does this title of this practical interview I put, the 6 hats, how does the 6 hats fit into it? It was actually in 2015 to 2017, it was a radio station show which was labeled 6 Thinking Hats, and you were one of the panel members for this show. And since 2015, you have done mentoring in different organizations on government level and also on startup level. So this is Tommy Andersen.
Better than I do.
So this is Tommy Andersen by Kalev Karna. Did I miss anything?
You had more than I thought, so it's good. No, you don't. You're not missing anything.
Great. So let's before we go to the questions from the audience, I have some questions. Tell me more about this Libratone and Apple deal. How did that happen, and what gave you the courage to go to Apple just with 3D mock-ups, drawings, and how did the deal not collapse when you finally showed up with a piece of crap?
So actually, Libratone is a story about actually doing a brand before you do products. So we did a lot of research on which industry were being hit by megatrend shifts. So the company was starting in 2009, and as you know, the iPhone is from 2007. So a lot of stuff happened at the same time. So one of the things, the iPhone enabled streaming versus CDs and LPs. So music was becoming digital. That's one megatrend shift. The other shift was that Apple released AirPlay, that you probably know from your iPhone and your speakers today. So you had a wireless streaming protocol. So I think two things happened in the Apple ecosystem, and those were the two. And the third thing that happened with Apple was that they actually sold their own audio division 2 years earlier, in 2007, alongside the introduction of the iPhone. So they did not have any speakers for iPods or iPads or iPhones, and they were actively looking for partners to complement them.
How did you know that? Was it something which you found out in a process by talking to people, or it was like visible?
No, it was visible. So the AirPlay thing was, of course, announced by Apple. We saw the kind of the success of the iPhone, and I'd seen that they sold off their audio business. So I think, you know, if you look at industries to disrupt as a startup, you should look at industries where a lot of things change at the same time. So if I can just walk you through some of the things that led to. So the thing with, you know, the iPhone and the wireless protocol coming led to that speakers were not like confined to be in a corner. You know, so you used to have like an amplifier, 2 speakers, and lots of wires, and that would be your audio, right? So once the speakers become wireless, they become, you know, objects that you can move around in your home. If they become objects you move around, you can design them, because then you want them to be nicely fitting to your interior. So it's obvious that if they become an object in your home, they should be nicely designed or colorful, you know, even with colors like your furniture or other design objects that you have. So that's kind of like the other, you know, thing that led to. Interior design is mostly, I know I'm stereotyping, is mostly a female domain, decision domain, so to speak. So I guess 80-90% of men, we will happily, you know, delegate that decision to our wives or our girlfriends, so to make the home nice. So if we want to, you know, sell speakers that are design objects, we cannot talk to males, we have to talk to females. That's the next thing that happened. If you want to talk to females, you cannot sell them stuff in a hi-fi store, because a hi-fi store will only talk to men, and they will talk in, you know, decibels and hertz and everything, you know, technical stuff. So if you as a woman walk into a hi-fi store, you're not being talked to, like, you know, literally speaking. So you have to find sales channels that will talk to women. Where's that? Apple Store, obviously, because they talk to men and women equally. So we would then, you know, target Apple because they had the Apple stores. And all the marketing that we would be doing, we would just like never talk to men, never talk tech specs, and always talk visuals. Hence the coloring, hence the kind of the bold messaging that we had around the products. So I think all the things, starting with the iPhone and the AirPlay, you know, and all the related, you know, ripple effects of that led to us doing, you know, designer speakers, targeted women in Apple stores. So it's kind of like an analytical approach to how do we segment market and consumers and, you know, sales channels, and then we started creating products around that. But we actually sold what I just said to Apple and say, hey, we know all this is happening. We can see, you know, how we can create a company around that. We think the speakers are going to be looking like this, renderings and stuff. If we do that, will you partner with us? And they said, yes, if you can do that, we will partner with you. So we approached them with just, you know, a booklet of renderings and said, hey, this is the value propositions, and we would like to be in your Apple stores. Pricing is going to be roughly this, functionality this, design like this. What do you say about this? And contrary to what most people think, Apple is very open, and most large, you know, tech companies are very open to talking to small startups because they know innovation is coming from there and not the other, you know, large companies. So they were very, very open to say, okay, if you can pull it off, we would like to have you in our stores. And then we started pulling it off, and you know, tried to actually, you know, get the coloring right. We used cashmere, clothing to surround the speakers, which is super hard to get nicely looking on a speaker. So the ones you're referring to, the first one we went without, they look like, you know, I don't know, whatever, you know, really bad. And they said, it's not exactly what you showed us in the renderings, so maybe you need to work on that. And of course we did that, but then, you know, iterations later, you know, we signed the deal with Apple in May 2010, and the final product was in the stores in October. So we spent like 5-6 months doing the actual speakers and, you know, all that. And actually we ended up, so the cashmere you see there, we ended up going to Italy and have it specially woven for us, because you cannot play, if you play audio through, Cashmere, it takes out most of the frequencies. It sounds like you're playing in a barrel or something. So we had to do that specially as well. So there's a lot of stuff going into all that. But the good thing was that Apple said, no, if you can pull it off, we'll sign an agreement right now. So contrary to most people, they will work with even small companies.
So you agreed also with quantities, with how much Apple will buy?
Yeah, and that's the first fuck up we did.
Okay.
Because we agreed, okay, we're going to be on sale in the Christmas season. In the audio industry, 50 to 60% of all sales happen in Q4 up to Christmas. So all the volume, is being ramped up in Asia and then sold during Christmas, and then, everything tanks after that. So they said, okay, we'd like this and this and this volume, and we said, that's fine, we'll do that, and we prepared for that. And we announced the product at a venue in Berlin called IFA in, I think it was August 2010, and interest exploded. So we had way too little volume for the actual season. So one of the hacks, that was kind of a fuck up, because we if you have the demand, you want to have supply. So what we actually did, so we ran out of stock 4 weeks before Christmas. And we said, okay, what do we do now? So our creative director came up with the idea. So the actual packaging of the product, right? So the packaging of the product we did in a miniature version. And we gave that to all the stores, and they had like an insert with a small, a small card saying, so you can come and buy the packaging in miniature versions. You can put a card in saying, hey, for the giver, and for the receiver of the present, hey, I got you this speaker from Libertone, it's super nice. You can collect it in January.
Okay.
Right? So we actually sold empty boxes for 4 weeks at full price with deliveries in January. So that's how we hacked that, because the supply chain
really
was
cool
super.
Hack.
Yeah.
Awesome. You mentioned that one of the fuck-ups was that you didn't have enough supply for the demand. You couldn't foresee that. What have been the other hard lessons learned from your entrepreneurial career?
So I think one of the things, if you work with large corporates as a small startup, you kind of get pulled through, different phases of your life by them. In the first year, we were on sale in Europe, so Apple stores in Europe and the Apple online store only in Europe, and that's 30, 40 stores now. And in the second year, they wanted us to be in all the American stores and all the Asian stores. And we had no supply chain to kind of fill that demand. So I think one of the things you really need to be careful about is, how do you manage growth where you're not kind of deciding where the growth happens. So we were trying to say, can we just start in the US, and we'll take Asia next year? And say, no, if you want to be with us, you have to be here, here, and here. And by the way, you have to establish offices around where we are, so we can talk to you guys directly. In Asia, we want you to be in Singapore. In the US, we want you to be in California. In the Europe, you're in Copenhagen. So we were forcefully globalized by Apple. I think that's a key learning, that if once you grab the horse, you have to stay on it, and that can be super hard, right? And also expensive. Yeah.
So what was your lesson learned of blitzscaling your team to different parts? How to do it? What was
raise capital, because you're going to need money to do it, because hyper growth is really expensive until you reach profitability. So I think we were a bit behind in the beginning. I funded the company myself for the first 2 years, and then we received venture funding to blitzscale with Apple. So I think if you run out of funding, you're running out money for your supply chain. If you guys have a hardware product, it's much more complicated than software, because you have to produce it, or you have to acquire components, produce it, move it around, stock it, ship it to your customers. There's all kinds of stuff involved in hardware, and it takes time. So there's a lot of planning in that as well, a lot of working capital, because you fund all that period until you sell the product. So that's a key learning, raise enough capital for you to have that growth.
So if you run with the big boys, be ready for fast growth. In order to fuel your growth, you have to raise capital in the right time before you run out of cash. What are the lessons learned from?
I think one of the things that we did right, that we were a founding team of 3, but I think the core team was roughly 10 people, and that core team of 8, 10 people were the ones that pulled the company through all the journey, I would say. So I think that the first hires that you do in your company are very, very key, because if you have to, like, fire them, and hire new ones, it takes a lot of time, and the first 10 people are the ones that you really have to rely on, for until you become like 100 people, I would say. So
how do you do that? How do you select that? You had like two guys approaching you with a Libertone idea or concept, and then you hired another 6, 7 to get to 8 to 10. So what did you find in these two guys approaching you, and how did you find the rest?
So there's a saying, hire slow, fire fast, meaning that you really have to spend time, get to know the people, take the references, see what they've done before. So really take time to hire the right people, and if they're not the right ones, then you fire them fast.
Did you have to do that?
No, actually we didn't. I think we fired one guy, but out of the first 10, the 9 of them were stayed on for a long, long time. And we did spend a lot of time on those ones. And then when you
if you say long time, what does it mean? Like how many interviews or how many?
I think most of them took like at least 3 to 6 months of intensive talks and references, and why do you want to be with us? And really finding out what kind of stamina that they had, because some of them were corporate, and I tend to not like to have corporate guys in a startup, because they're so they're used to having all the support of a corporate. And you don't have that in a startup, so I'm really keen on not having corporates. But some of the supply chain guys, we needed their, specialty and their competency, running a volume-based supply chain. So we needed that, and they came from corporates, right? So we spent a lot of time interviewing them, and taking strong references on them. And then there were some of them we just, came and said, spend a month with us working. You're not hired, but do your best while you're here, and then we'll hire you. So I spent a long time.
Isn't there a tension as a startup that you want people on board fast, you want to move fast, but you're talking about like 3 to 6 months of having like talks with guys and going references at how to overcome this tension that I have to hire fast and start moving?
So and you want to do things fast while you're starting, but I think there's also a truth to that. If you don't get the DNA of the company right, first, right, you spend a lot of time fixing it, as you will spend a lot of time fixing wrong hires, because everyone can see when you have a wrong hire, and it drags everyone down, and in the end you always end up firing them, right? So I think we spend a lot of time, the design DNA of them. We're a design company as well, so we spend a lot of time on the design, all the fabrics that we're going to be using, and the packaging, everything had to be like pixel perfect, because this was Apple. We spend a lot of time on that. We spend a lot of time on the brand positioning, right? So which values are we going to be known for as a brand, right? We want to be a bold brand. We want to be a female brand. We want to have a Scandinavian design tradition. This was on the backside of the financial crisis, so people did not have the same money as they had before the crisis. So we wanted to be a long-lasting product. The one you just showed there, you could actually change. It's called the zip, because you could unzip the fabric and then put another one on top. So the speaker could, you could keep it for years and years and years, because you can just change stuff. So all that stuff, was part of the kind of like the brand DNA and the values of the company. And yes, it takes time to do, but I think it's time invested, not spending it later on. So I think all those key elements of the company, you need to have that in place before you can actually have hypergrowth.
How did you, like, when you were a design company, in essence, how did you design, or did you spend extra time on designing the DNA, what you mentioned that is very important, and how do you actually do it? It's like a very fluffy concept, like DNA of my startup.
So we had like 5 design elements. So the logo tag would always be there. You cannot see, there's only one button on the speaker, which would be like this one. There's one, instead of like a huge amount of knobs and an amplifier, we had one button on the speaker. We would only do like white surfaces. We'd never do black surfaces, but because black is a male color, white is a color that is easy to decorate with in your home, and a lot of people have like white walls, so it's much easier. And so the design DNA was set in stone, and every product that we then cranked out would adhere to the design DNA, right?
Okay.
And all the communications we did would adhere to the brand DNA. So again, creating that DNA made it much easier to do all the secondary stuff on the backside of that, right? So I'm a preparation type of guy. I like to prepare stuff. I like to to set it right, because then you can actually execute fast and have growth on the backside of that.
So in your case, like the product itself determined the DNA of your company, like which guys fit in and which guys don't, and so it was drawn from the product concept.
I wouldn't say the product concept. I think actually, if we start the brand concept, and the market and the end consumer being a female,
okay,
that said a lot of things on the brand side. The brand side then said, okay, if we're going to target those groups, how should the design DNA look? And if the design DNA looks like this, how should the product look? So the product is actually like third in that range of thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about like lessons learned and some major failures. What do you consider your biggest success?
What you just said, I think the biggest success was actually signing an agreement with Apple. I think we knew from early days that if we could get them as a partner, we could just grab the horse and then ride with them. So I think that was a major achievement. I think all the growth that we received later on came based on that. In the end, getting acquired by this Asian consortium was, in my view today, because we had two things. One, the brand, a strong brand, and the connectivity to Apple. So the interest of actually acquiring the company came from a group of investors that wanted the connectivity to Apple. They've been trying that for years and never got through. So they acquired us to get that connectivity. I would say that's in hindsight, but I think that's what happened. Yeah. 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 So, Bang & Olufsen. Yeah, but they have their own. This is like, I don't know, a 5,000-man company, Bang & Olufsen, right? So, and they have their own design tradition, and I think we thought of them being like classical, old-school design, to be honest. And we wanted this to be more fresh, more young, and in a complete other, price range. Bang & Olufsen is horrendously expensive. I mean, a TV costs, I don't know, 10,000 euro and up. And speakers, are very, very expensive. So we wanted to be in another, part of the industry, and we had another design tradition, right? So more like, more young, I would say, more, vibrant brand. Yeah. But you're right. And Denmark has a lot of audio. I think we have like 15, 20 audio companies with, different, value proposition, different designs. Some of them very old school, very, hi-fi oriented, and some very young. Bang & Olufsen has B&O Play, which is a sub-brand of Bang & Olufsen for the young generation. And I talked to the CEO of Bang & Olufsen, a couple of years after we sold the company. He said, we only started B&O Play because of Libretone, because we could see you eating into our customer base, right? So they started that to counter us, you could say.
Cool. By the way, you were a design company. Did you have like hardware development skills in-house, or did you buy everything in?
No, so we had design skills definitely in-house. We had a group of 5 doing all the designs and the materials and all that stuff. Also working with, all the designs that we would fit. So we also tried to make the design of the speakers, fit with other types of product. So we had a team of 5 for the design, and we had a development initially of 10, 15 people, hardware, software, mechanics, everything. Yeah, so we had that in-house. Yeah.
Okay.
All the production was outsourced, Eastern Europe and to Asia. But all the development, also audio, DSP, everything was done in-house. Software. Yeah.
Any tips for finding right suppliers for producers in Asia, in Eastern Europe?
Yeah, I think
you can have like very different colors and shapes and.
There's everything from Foxconn and down.
Yes.
So I would say you should always be with an EMS, so with a manufacturer that has that targets the volume that you would like to produce. So one of the errors we made, maybe I fuck up, we went to Flextronics, if you know them. They're like in top 5 of EMSs, and we actually signed an agreement with them because they were already a partner with Apple. But we were so small in their books that we did not mean anything to them. If we were a success or not, they didn't care. And we could feel that because, if they had, limited capacity, who would be, we would
You
always
never
be
got
like
it.
booted because, okay, we have this other guy. He has 10 times your volume. We're going to do his product. So you can wait 2 weeks, can't you? No, we can't. So go with a manufacturer that has roughly the same size or target as the volume you're going to be doing. That's super key. And then you can exchange them over time as your volume grows, because then, we grew into Flextronics territory. Okay. So we left them, we went with other guys, and then we came back to them because we liked them actually. And then we grew into the volume that made sense for them as well. That's a key learning, at least, for a hardware company. You got to play with the ones that want to play in your scheme. Yeah.
So going to the Six Hats, what was this all about, and what did the panel, being a panelist, mean, and has it been useful in later mentoring, that knowing the Six Hats logic, that you ask different types of questions on the same problem in order to come up with better solutions? So
there's this concept they call six thinking hats. It has to do with how do you look at a given problem, right? So you can look from a creative side, what do I not like about it, what's not going to work, and what's definitely going to work. So it's you can Google it. So it's a concept, and the whole radio program was built that we were like 3 mentors, and a couple of startups over 2 hours of talk, and they would pitch their idea, and we like from the angle of those six things, as talk to the actual company and product that they had. So it's a structured way to look at a startup and what they're doing, and will it be a success or not, or what should they improve on, and stuff like that. And I think for me it was a way to like pay forward, to a younger generation of startups, with the experience that I had, the learnings I had for the companies I ran, and also it was quite a popular program, so it was useful for me. I became an angel investor at the same time, so it was also kind of attracting deal flow to myself, talking to other startups and being promoted in that radio program. It's a weekly program, very, very funny. Yeah.
So we got to talk about your experiences and lessons learned as an entrepreneur. So what have been your lessons learned as an angel investor? That if we look at portfolio, first investments you made, and what you are now looking, what's the difference? How has that changed over time?
I think if there are angel investors here, I would say you have to decide a couple of things. One, do you want to be an active angel investor? Do you actually want to aid the companies that you're going to be investing in? Are you going to be a passive or an active angel? If you want to be an active angel, you can probably not do more than 4 or 5 investments, because then you cannot spend time. And if you promise to be an active angel, you will not be an active angel if you have more than 5 companies, because you're going to be spending your time there. So that's the first thing. Do you want to be partly or no full-time active or just passive? I thought I was going to be active. I ended up being passive because I had too many investments. That's the other thing. Don't do too many investments too quickly. I mean, stay back. Keep your money in your pocket. Don't get super excited about a lot of stuff at the same time. You know all about this, I guess, because you see so many good things. I can do this. I can do that. I spread my wealth. And if you do that, you end up not being able to do it. And you forget about being active because you have all this other stuff on your plate. So 2 things: decide active, passive, and second, be patient. Do not do more than maybe 2, max 3 investments per year, and then decide, what's your strategy going to be from there.
Has it also changed what you are looking in the startups?
Yeah. So maybe just a third thing also. I like to, so the reason you saw Nordic Makers were 10 tech guys from the US and the Nordics coming together and doing investments as a group. And the reason for that is that we saw the same deal flow anyway. So if you see the same deal flow, why not just co-invest? Mm-hmm. And I'm not a brighter guy than the 9 other guys. So it's also useful to have, to talk around investments with those guys. Mm-hmm. And then we actually did a small, we created a company for each investment that we did, and we could just chip in, with the ones we want to invest in. So I think if you are an angel, it's good that you work with other people and do investments alongside other people, also in groups like you. Mm-hmm. So that's the third thing. So what's the question again?
So a question that how is it? Has it changed? What are you looking in the startups compared to what you looked at first, and what are you looking now? What are you looking for?
I think I've become very keen on knowing the team that is, doing the startup. I think any good team can execute on a half-baked idea, right? Or like maybe not a stellar idea, and any sloppy team will destroy any strong idea, right? So the team is everything, because in any startup it's the execution power of the team that really pulls it off or drags it down. So the human side of any startup for me is number one now, and far above anything else. And then after that comes, okay, what's the actual idea? What's the tech? What's the target market? What's the timing? Is it transformative? All that stuff we also look at in the fund, to be honest. Yeah.
So team is everything. It's a very wide concept. What signs or points are you looking at in the team, or what things will be like a red flags to you that if you see this, that sorry, I'll take a step back.
Yeah. So a classical error in founding teams is that they look like each other. So it could be like 3 tech founders or 3 commercial founders, because they think, so the tech founders think the product is everything, and once I get the product right, it will sell itself. Common error, never happens. And the commercial founders think this is super easy. I just acquire some standard components and I put this all together and I can go and sell it, right? And none of this works. So what we look for in the fund and also as angels is like diverse teams that has commercial talent, technical talent, sales talent, and maybe a guy that can the CEO that floats between the two. So the right team is like 3, maybe 4 people, 2, maybe never 1, at least 2, 3, hopefully 3, with that blend of commercial and technical talent, and a CEO that can fundraise. Because in our world, fundraising is a primary quality also beside commercial and technical talent. So that's what we look.
So are you looking for guys who have already proven it? Like a CEO must have to show, has to be able to show that I've raised funds already, or in some cases you're actually willing to take a chance and invest into guys who haven't raised funding before?
It really depends. I think most startups that become successful have teams that know the vertical that they're trying to disrupt, or what they're trying to go into. So it could be people that come from corporates, branching out and saying, hey, I know this space, something here is not working, I will do this startup that then does this in the industry. So we like people with vertical experience in the industry that they're trying to disrupt. So I think that's a key thing. Whether they have fundraised before, I mean, if they're young guys, they probably haven't. And we can't only support people that have done things before. There has to be someone that supports first-time teams as well. So, and we will, if we invest, we will help them with the next rounds in fundraising. So we will stand on their side and doing fundraising with them. But so of course, if they tried it before, it's an added bonus. Yeah.
So what's the sweet spot of investment for byFounders? That if we talk from a fund perspective, that yes, you can do deals from that and that angle, but what's the sweet spot? What's most likely?
So if you're familiar, we have different stages of investment. The first one is the angel stage. Well, the first one is like friends, fools, and family, putting in a small check, and then in comes the angels. Angels are still private money, so typically people that have done well in another industry or earn some money, they put some of their own private wealth to work in a startup. So that's angel money, and after that comes pre-seed, seed, and then Series A, B, C, D. After that, pre-seed is a phase where, where you may have a very initial product. You have an initial idea about the market. You may have the first users or customers even. The technology may not be super, crisp yet, and you're really just trying to find your way around as a company. That's typically a pre-seed round or concept round. You may have a prototype of everything. We can do investments there, but we typically don't lead them. It's typically angels that do that lead those rounds, and we will chip in to get like foot in the door and and get to look at the companies.
And chip in, what's the ticket?
Yeah. Chip in could be anything from 100,000 euros to, these days, 500,000 euros.
Okay.
Even pre-seed rounds get bigger. So yeah, but typically 1 to 2 to 300,000, not more than that, right? In a pre-seed round.
Okay.
Then there's the seed round. In the seed round, you have a quite strong product. You know your market. You have users and quite a few of them. You may have paying customers, maybe not. You may be in several markets, but not necessarily. You're getting close to what we call a product market fit. So the product that you're doing actually fits the consumers or the clients that you have. That's a seed round. And what we bring to the table, we like to lead those rounds. So that's when the angels or the pre-seed funds step down to be followers, and we lead the rounds. A seed round these days can be anything from 500,000 euros to 3-4 million euros. To be honest, seed rounds are getting bigger and bigger as well, and we like to lead those. After the seed round, we can still invest, but then we're not leading anymore typically. An A round these days is where the product is right, you have product market fit, you know your market, you have a huge amount of users, you have paying customers. If it's a SaaS business, you may have $1 million in ARR and stuff like that. So it's a lot of metrics around you can look at, and this becomes more like Excel investing because you have a lot of numbers you can look at.
But in pre-seed and seed, you look still at people. That if I'm SaaS business, that if I have some monthly recurring revenue, it's nice, but it's not a deal breaker, or it's like in early stages there are no like metrics that you look for.
There are a few at seed, more than pre-seed, of course, and MRR-wise, maybe you're up to like 50K a month, stuff like that. But in some companies, you're still developing the technology. You're starting to acquire customers and users. So it's very, very early days. What we say, we don't have much signal besides what we can look at in people, and what have they built of traction, and do the initial users love them, and do they show passion in what they do. Whereas an A round, it's much more metrics based, and we can look at their KPIs, and we can pull down our regime of numbers on top of what they do. And we can do the math around how much do we think they're worth. So it's an A round is something completely different than the previous ones.
So let's look at this issue from the other angle. That we talked about what the VCs or angels are looking in the startups. What should a startup or look in angel investors or VC funds? Like how to decide that I'm a SaaS startup? When should I go to Superangel? When should I go to byFounders? Yeah. Because both of us invest into SaaS businesses. We've done it successfully. Yeah. So how do I, as a startup founder, make difference? That, or is any money good?
Typically, angels and funds have stages where they invest typically, and their sweet spot. So the seed stage is our sweet spot. So we would never do, angel type investments. That's way too early for us. We don't have, the insight or the kind of like feet on the ground to do angel investments. For example, here we're based in Copenhagen. We would never do an investment here at angel stage, right? We would work with local angels that know the startups, the people, in the area, and then we'd co-invest with them. So as a startup, you would look for people that, are people on, feet on the street, close to where they are. And especially if you need the insight of the angels, and the network of the angels, and, the experience of the angels and the competency of the angels, you want them to be supportive in the journey that you're on as a startup, right? Once you get, past that and you want, bigger checks, typically the angels, run out of money, or they don't want to keep, funding the companies. So at that stage, you need to go to a fund. And the fund is just like upscaling what the angels do. We're very supportive as well. We bring operational people that can aid you. We have a vast network of contacts within, VCs, other technology companies, the large corporates, and even clients. So we will help you get introduced to those, which is super hard as a startup to be. So we have a range of services around what we do besides, the check to actually fund your company, right? So I think there's a natural kind of like food chain of money, and you cannot tap into, you have to start somewhere, and there's a natural way to go through those phases.
But let's say I'm in a seed phase, and I have like multiple options, investors who are doing seed phase deals. Does it matter or like on seed stage, everybody says that we have a great network, we can make introductions to the next round investors, and the talk from the VC side is pretty much the same. How should I, as a startup founder, differentiate them? Or
I think the good thing is that there is transparency now. Most of the funds are very transparent about what they do, where their expertise is, which geography they invest, what stages they invest at. So I think you can easily, I mean, if you Google it, you can almost map out the VC space now and who's active where and what do they do. And you can also Google now, so what do the current portfolio companies think about that VC? Is he helpful? Is he a shitty guy? Does he offer the wrong terms? You know, and even though if it's a SaaS business, you know, Point 9 in Berlin is a SaaS only seed Series A focused fund. So that's squarely, you know, that's what we do. And you can talk to all the portfolio companies and see how are they doing, right? So I would try to find people and funds that are in the industry that I operate in, and that I can take references on. As we take references on startups, you should take references on us. What do we do? Are we supportive? You know, do we make good deals and stuff like that? And then decide based on that. I think in the early stages, you need to have people around you that, you know, can help you. Once you get to Series A and B, you know your way around on your own as a startup.
So you mentioned a few times good terms. What do you suggest startups to avoid? What are the bad terms, or if I'm doing it first time, never have raised funding, what should I look for in terms of bad terms?
So I think in general, you know, you should be aware of your cap table. So how much you give away of your company. You should never give away more than 20% in any given round. Okay. That's one thing. That's a general rule of thumb. Before you enter an A round, so after the friends, fools and family, angel, pre-seed, seed, A round, before you enter an A round, you as founders in your startup still need to have more than 50% ownership of your company, right? That's another rule of thumb. So if you sit with 10% of your company before an A round, no one's going to invest in you, because the thinking is this from a VC perspective. If you are so diluted this early in the journey of your startup, you are not incentivized to stay on when things, you know, get tough, right? If you end up with like 5%, you know, of the shareholding, and, you know, investors and angels sit with 95%, we sit on all the good money once you become successful. And when it gets rough, you're probably going to be saying to us, okay, I quit. Right? So you're going to jump out of your own startup, you just leave it there, and we lose our investment. Because if the good founders leave, we typically lose our investment. So we have a vetted interest in making sure that the cap table that you have is maintained, and never give away too much ownership very early on. That's a key thing for us. And we will, so if we experience what we call a broken cap table, where the founders own too little of their own company, we will try and go to the angels and say, hey guys, you took way too much ownership too early. You need to give 20% back to the founders. And you're going to say, no, never going to happen. And we say, okay, fine, then you can fund them yourselves. So we're going to walk away from deals with broken cap tables. And in the end, normally angel will see, okay, we need to reinstate the cap table, because in the end they get rich because the value of the company, you know, is massive, right? Not by having a huge percentage of a small cake. That's a key thing for us. The other thing you should be aware of is if the investors have too many rights, whether that be veto rights on anything you do in the business. You know, if you should ask me as a VC all the time you do stuff, that's going to limit your ability to operate. So be careful with that. And there's, you know, technical stuff with what we call liquidation preferences. You know, once the proceeds come out, if I get all my money back with a multiplier on top before you get any money, be aware of that as well. But I think, you know, the good thing about we're in 2020s roughly now, that these days a lot of the good funds have very founder-friendly terms towards the startups. So there is a route to go these days with funds that have that and that do not have skewed terms. And I think some of the worst terms are being flushed out of the market now by the good funds. So yeah.
Have you seen any changes in the way how startups pitch to byFounders. What are your suggestions in terms of what not to do?
I think a lot of the startups these days, they go through accelerators, right? So there's accelerators and incubators everywhere, and one of the things they learn there is to pitch. So a lot of the startups these days, they come with a picture-perfect pitch of who they are and what they do. One of the things that we ask for as a fund is what we call the ugly slide.
What do you mean?
Yeah, the ugly slide is everything that is not picture-perfect, right? Because typically, if you only show us the glossy picture of everything that works, we don't believe you because there's always something wrong. So two things could be wrong. So one thing, you don't know about the business you're running, so you haven't seen what's wrong. That's one thing. Or number two, you're lying to us. You don't tell us the exact truth of where you're at. So besides the pitch that you bring, we say, okay, bring the ugly side. What is not working? What keeps you awake at night? What are you afraid of? In the next period, and why are we even the right investor for you, right? So if you pitch us, you can come with the pitch, but you should always bring the ugly slide as well.
Have you ever seen a startup who has actually had the ugly slide?
Yes, because we posted a blog post a year ago saying this is what an ugly slide looks. So actually, people, they show up with 20 slides and then the ugly slide. So and user can confirm this. So we receive decks now that are not 20 slides but 21. The last one being the ugly slide, which is good because then they're upfront about the challenges that they have, and we don't have to where does it hurt when we poke you, right?
What's the downside of having an ugly slide? That you bring some issues, like you try to predict from investor side what risks they see, typical risk that there are the Google, Amazon, and these guys out there. They will eat you alive. So this is like ugly question because you can't fight it, or there's no easy answer. So bringing that up on an ugly slide, it might direct the discussion into wrong alley. Or
no, I don't think so because in the end, having an investor on board or a VC is like a marriage. We're going to be together for maybe 7, 8, 10 years, which is longer than most marriages, right? So you have to be with someone that you actually like, and you have to be trustworthy. So, and if you walk into a marriage with a lot of secrets, it's not going to be a good marriage, right? Okay. So, I think in any way, so just having the ugly slide gives you kind of like a clean sheet, and we will do our due diligence anyway. So, if we write a term sheet, give that to you, we're going to come in, look through all your books, talk to all your people anyway. And if we encounter things in the due diligence that you haven't told us about, that's a bad start to the marriage, right? So, I think the ugly slide is a way to be frank, to be open, and to also give you give us the credit, you're us giving early access to the challenges, but also the opportunities for us to kind of to plan how do we aid you with that, how do we put in people that can help you with those challenges that you have. So it's a way of level setting between you as a startup and us as investors, because once we invested, we're in the same boat, and we should not have secrets towards each other at that stage. So that's what the ugly slide does.
As you had the post about what the ugly slide looks like, and you mentioned that it would be good if a startup would know what can they get from byFounders. What have been the reasons? What the startups have said that what do they want from you, or what do they see that why they want you as an investor?
Yeah. I think one of the things that is maybe the hack of our fund is that we have now 55 entrepreneurs around the fund, so seasoned people that have done their own startups and successfully, either in the Nordics or globally. Half of these founders are based in the Nordics or Baltics, and half of them are in the US. And they're like a support group of the fund. They know a lot of verticals, they know a lot of technology domains, and a lot of industries. So what we do and what these people do, they bring us deal flow, but they also help the portfolio companies with the ugly slide and all the challenges there. So we put in like 2-3 people from this collective in each of the portfolio companies to aid them and to be like the liaison officers towards the rest of the group. So again, we're not just a check, we're hopefully also your wingman, as a fund once we invest in you. So I think a lot of the deal flow that we get these days is from startups that like the approach of not just being, having, the financing, but also, in the early days, people that actually know the industry, know the business that you're trying to build, know the technology, and we can give good advice about that as a fund, and even recruiting and stuff like that.
Somebody asked a question that you supposedly said that you want to keep the companies longer in Denmark and Nordics before they go global. What's the reasoning behind that, and when do I, as a startup, know what measure should be there to know that now it's the right time to go global?
I think most companies go global once their customer base, expands. So you can grow your company in the Nordics or the Baltics easily, and that's a good home market to try yourself. But how many people are, like 30, 35 million in the total of Nordics and Baltics? It's like a mid-sized Chinese city. So in that sense, we're a very, very small market. So you cannot really make it big in the Nordics, because you can make it big in Germany, because like 85 million people, you can become a rich entrepreneur, a rich startup by just servicing the German market or the French or the UK market and the US market, of course. You cannot really make it big in the Nordics. So for that, I think, most startups that come from here, they would try in the home market to get some traction, but we would, aid them in globalizing their efforts. And why do you want them to stay longer here? I think, we are countries, we need still the tax, the tax-paying element of having startups, because most corporates don't create jobs anymore. They outsource jobs to low-cost countries. So all the job creation in the Nordics and Baltics happens at the small and medium-sized businesses now. And it's taxpayers, and we have to pay for our welfare systems. Hence, you want to keep the companies at least for some time here, or establish presence, like you have here with, with Bolt, with Sky, TransferWise, all those companies. They have presence here. They have, good, citizens that pay tax. Of course, once they globalize, they need to go to the US and establish a US subsidiary or UK subsidiary, and that's just a natural progression of the company. But I think, for the value of, the societies and the tax element, you want to have them here as well, and for the jobs, of course, we need to do something here as well, right?
How can you, as an investor, push it or support this idea that let's have something still in Nordics that
I think if I look at Denmark, so we have 6 or 7 unicorns now out of our territory. 5 of them went straight to Silicon Valley and raised money, and those 5 now have US headquarters, and most of their jobs created in the US, and they become US corporations. I think the top 5, I think we made a statistic saying that they created roughly 12,000 jobs. 800 of those jobs are in Denmark. Okay. So by not having local venture capital and growing local, subsidiaries or just the headquarters, things just move up much quicker, right? So we lose the value element of having Danish investors, gaining, all the proceeds of the investments. That's one thing, and the jobs being created by those corporations, we lose both of them if we don't have local venture capital. So I think by funding them locally, we can make them strong here and maintain a position in our local country. And that is, for me, super important. That's the aspiration of byFounders, being able to create stuff. And also, I think, Silicon Valley is losing its gravity at this time. It's super expensive to set up shop, employees are very expensive. And you see tech hubs, springing up everywhere. Here, the Nordics is a great unicorn factory as such. Israel, Berlin, London, Paris, So it's not obvious to go to Silicon Valley and create a company anymore. You can easily do it here, and you can grow it big here. And then at some point, you want, of course, a presence there, but it may not. You don't have to go there right away. And that is really a changing, mega trend. Again, to speak about that you can do stuff here easily. And then at some point you will globalize. You don't have to do it right away.
So what's your last say to the startups in the audience?
I say, I think, you have a strong community here. Talent is, super strong environment. You have a strong, track record in the corporates that you created. I think alongside the Nordic region, I think we as a region, we tie nicely together. I would definitely suggest that you raise local money, because that gives you local aid, local insight, and people that, can help you. And I would even suggest that the first round or the second round or the first 2 or 3 rounds, raise them in the Nordics or in Northern Europe, because again, it helps you doing the stuff that you need to do here. But then create connectivity to funds elsewhere, UK funds or US funds, in the A round or in the B round. Then you start creating connectivity. And then go with funds that provide more than money. That's I think that's a key factor, because you grow quicker and you scale quicker once you have people around you that is your wingman, and not just a check that you receive and then good luck with that. So I think that would be a suggestion.
Thank you very much.
Likewise.
So I know that you have to move ahead. We'll have a few minutes here if anybody had some personal questions we didn't cover. But thank you very much for coming. I hope it was insightful to you. I learned a lot. I love the hack with Apple, selling empty boxes for full price. That's a nice one. So thank you for coming, and we plan to do such events continuously, so keep in touch with our Facebook page, and see you around.